I remember the exact moment I realized my health wasn't just a part of my life. It was the foundation of everything I held dear. I was sitting in my small, dimly lit office, staring blankly at the screen. The projects on my to-do list were piling up, but I couldn't bring myself to move. My body felt like it was weighed down by invisible chains, tired, sluggish, aching. I wasn't sick, per se, but I wasn't well either. I'd spent years climbing the corporate ladder, pushing myself harder than ever, thinking I could balance everything, my career, relationships, and my health. But somewhere along the way, health had become an afterthought. Late nights filled with takeout, endless cups of coffee, and long hours at my desk had taken a toll I hadn't fully realized. It wasn't until I woke up one morning, after what seemed like the 10th restless night in a row, that it hit me my health was slipping away, and I was letting it happen. That was when Matthew, a friend from the gym, sat me down. He'd been my mentor without me even knowing it. His calm demeanor, combined with his personal transformation, made me listen intently when he spoke. He said, "Your greatest wealth is your health. Everything else comes after that." Matthew was no stranger to hardship. He had worked in tech, in a high-stress job that consumed his time and energy. But he made a decision to reclaim his health, and through his journey, he learned 10 valuable lessons that could turn anyone's life around, if they were willing to listen and take action. Matthew gave me a challenge. If you want to change your life, it's not about instant fixes. It's about taking small, deliberate steps, one day at a time. I was skeptical, but I also felt desperate enough to try. He guided me stepwise until I learned every single secret of health over wealth. Step 1. Begin with awareness. Acknowledge the state you're in. Matthew's first step was simple but profound. Become aware. You can't change something if you don't know what's broken, he said. He handed me a journal. Track your energy, your food, your sleep, your mood, every day. Just write it down. At first, I thought this was a waste of time. But Matthew insisted, when you see the patterns, that's when you'll understand what needs to change. I started. Each night before bed, I wrote in the journal, how did I feel? What did I eat? How long did I sleep? What was my energy like throughout the day? The patterns were startling. My energy crashed every afternoon. I hadn't noticed how often I ate junk food, or how much caffeine I consumed just to stay awake. My mood was constantly in flux, stressed, anxious, and drained. Matthew's words echoed in my mind. Awareness is the first step to transformation. As I reflected on the data in my journal, it was clear. My life was out of balance, and my health was paying the price. But this simple act of awareness became my first victory. I wasn't just guessing anymore. I was seeing the facts in front of me. And that gave me hope, because now I had a starting point. Step 2. Nourish before you need to repair. The second lesson Matthew shared with me was just as simple, yet profound. Nourish your body before it begs for repair. He told me a story about his friend Sarah, who lived in Toronto. Sarah had always been the go-to person in her office, efficient, reliable, a real multitasker. But her health was a distant priority. She worked 2 jobs, barely slept, and ate fast food on the go. It wasn't until Sarah collapsed at work that she realized just how badly her body had been neglected. The doctors diagnosed her with early-stage cardiovascular disease, prediabetes, and severe fatigue. The wake-up call was as loud as it was frightening. Rather than succumb to the reality of her declining health, Sarah made a radical shift. She started with small, manageable changes, switching from sugary snacks to fruits, opting for homemade meals over takeout, and adding walks into her routine. Her journey didn't require perfection, just progress. Within a year, Sarah not only lost weight, but she also reversed her pre-diabetic symptoms and felt more energized than she had in years. Matthew told me, "You don't have to wait for an emergency to start taking care of yourself. Start small and build from there." Inspired by Sarah's story, I made my own changes. I started by swapping my daily sugary breakfast for oatmeal with fruits and nuts. I replaced my after-lunch nap with a brisk walk around the block. These small shifts seemed insignificant at first, but over time they added up. I felt more awake, less bloated, and surprisingly more clear-headed. I began researching nutrition and learned about the Mediterranean diet, practiced in countries like Spain and Italy. These cultures prioritized fresh vegetables, whole grains, and healthy fats over processed foods. I realized this wasn't just about food. It was about treating my body with respect and understanding that what I fed it determined the way I felt and performed in life. Step 3. Move to stay alive, not just fit. The third truth Matthew dropped on me wasn't about exercise programs or gym memberships. He said, "Your body is designed to move, not to punish you in a workout. Just to move so you stay alive." This hit differently. I had always associated exercise with punishment, sweating in a crowded gym, forcing myself to jog because I hated how I looked. But Matthew reframed it. "Movement is not about weight loss," he said. "It's about circulation, about mental clarity, about connection to yourself." He shared a powerful story from Germany, where a corporate wellness program studied the effects of daily walking breaks. Instead of pushing employees into rigorous fitness routines, they encouraged 20-minute walking groups 3 times a week. The result, not just physical improvement, better focus, reduced anxiety, and higher job satisfaction. And this wasn't just a one-off program. It became policy in several companies across Berlin. Employees even began organizing weekend walks with their families. It was movement with purpose, movement with joy. Inspired, I began walking mindfully, not just with music blaring, but observing my breath, my routines. I started doing short stretches in the morning. I even signed up for a beginner's dance class just because it sounded fun. Then Matthew told me about his trip to Spain. In cities like Barcelona and Valencia, people walk everywhere, not out of obligation, but as culture. After dinner strolls, known as paseos, were part of daily life. These weren't rushed or forced. They were slow, social, intentional. It made me realize fitness isn't about becoming an athlete. It's about building a relationship with your body. A relationship where you listen and respond with care. So I stopped punishing myself for missed gym days. Instead, I made a promise to move daily in any form I enjoyed. Some days it was yoga, others gardening. Even cleaning became an act of movement. The change, my joints felt looser, my sleep deepened. I stopped relying on coffee to function, and mentally I felt lighter. Health wasn't in a gym, it was in the act of honoring the body I had. That shift changed everything. Step by step, I began to feel more alive. Step 4. Prioritize sleep like it's sacred. Matthew once told me, sleep is where your body repairs, your brain detoxes, and your soul whispers. I'd always brushed off sleep. In fact, I used to brag about functioning on 5 hours a night. It made me feel ambitious, productive, until it didn't. I was constantly tired, moody, forgetful. I'd read the same sentence 3 times and still not understand it. I'd reach for caffeine and sugar to make it through the day, only to crash even harder. Matthew sat me down and said, "Imagine trying to run a marathon with no training. That's what you're doing to your body every day when you rob it of rest." He shared a story about a sleep study conducted in the UK, which found that sleep deprivation reduced productivity more than alcohol. People who were sleep deprived performed tasks with the same mental impairment as someone legally drunk. Then he told me about his visit to Australia, where he met a family who ran a wellness retreat in Byron Bay. Their number 1 rule: 8 hours of sleep. Guests weren't allowed screens in bedrooms. Lights were dimmed by 9 p.m. They practiced gratitude journaling before bed and drank herbal teas instead of wine. The results: most guests reported improved mood, digestion, and energy within just 3 days. Some even cried when describing how long it had been since they'd felt truly rested. I was sold, so I started winding down at 9 p.m, no screens. I swapped blue lights for soft lamps. I journaled my thoughts in gratitude. I played soft instrumental music and sipped chamomile tea. Within a week, I was falling asleep faster. My dreams returned. I woke up feeling human. Matthew called it sleep hygiene. Just like brushing your teeth, creating a bedtime routine signals your body it's time to rest, and it works. One night, I lay in bed, listening to rain outside, and felt a strange sense of peace. Not because everything in my life was perfect, but because I was giving myself the most healing gift of all: rest. I realized then that productivity doesn't come from pushing through exhaustion, it comes from honoring your body's rhythm. In sleep, we don't just rest, we reset, we heal, we rise stronger. And from that night forward, sleep became my sacred practice. Step 5. Patience in provocation. If nourishing the body was essential for survival, then guarding the heart was necessary for true peace. Matthew once told me, "You'll know how healthy you are not when things are easy, but when someone provokes you and you don't bleed anger." That line stayed with me. I used to think of health only in physical terms: what I ate, how I slept, how much I moved. But true wellness, I realized, included emotional resilience, especially patience. One evening, I was at the grocery store. A man cut ahead of me in line, bumped into my cart, and muttered something under his breath. Instantly, I felt my chest tighten. My mind raced with snappy comebacks. But then I remembered what Matthew once said: when someone presses your buttons, they're not showing you who they are. They're showing you where you're still wounded. So I paused, took a deep breath, and chose silence. Later that night, I told Matthew about the incident. He smiled and said, that was your real workout today." Then he told me a story that pierced deeper than any fitness mantra ever could. It was about the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, who was once publicly insulted by a man while walking with his companions. The companions, furious, wanted to retaliate, but the Prophet raised his hand calmly and said, "He is not speaking to me, he is speaking to his pain." Instead of reacting, he walked away. Later, he explained that responding to hatred with hatred only adds fire to fire. But responding with patience is like pouring water over flames. That story changed something in me. I started seeing moments of provocation not as personal attacks, but as opportunities to practice spiritual strength. I noticed how often I reacted, not out of truth, but out of habit. A raised voice here, a passive-aggressive message there, and always the regret afterward. So I began a new habit. I called it the pause. Whenever I felt triggered, I paused. I closed my eyes. I breathed in deeply, and I asked myself, what part of me is still hurting? What would peace choose in this moment? It wasn't always perfect. There were days I slipped, snapped, reacted. But even then, I reflected instead of justifying. And slowly, something inside began to soften. One evening, Matthew shared an African proverb with me. When there is no enemy within, the enemies outside cannot harm you. That hit me hard, because I realized most of my reactions weren't about others. They were about unresolved parts of me, parts that needed healing, parts that needed patience. I learned that true health is not just walking 10,000 steps or eating organic. It's being able to sit with discomfort and not let it define you. It's choosing dignity over dominance, silence over spite. In a world that praises instant comebacks and savage responses, patience is revolutionary. And every time I chose it, I felt stronger, not weaker, empowered, not passive. Because now I understood. The real flex is not how loud you shout. It's how softly you can breathe in the middle of a storm and still choose peace. Step 6. Consistency in private. We often celebrate the big wins, the before and after photos, the marathon medals, the impressive transformations. But Matthew once told me, what truly defines your health isn't what you do in public, it's what you repeat in private. That line haunted me, in the best way. He explained how real health is built, not in crowds, but in quiet moments. When no one's watching, do you still choose the walk? Still choose the water over soda? Still choose stretching over scrolling? He shared an example from New Zealand, a government study on long-term health improvement programs. The data revealed something surprising. Participants who journaled their meals and habits privately, even without external accountability, showed the highest success rates. Why? Because their motivation wasn't external validation, it was internal commitment. It reminded me of my own quiet mornings, when I decided to stretch for just 10 minutes, or when I resisted the urge to eat a donut and instead grabbed fruit. No one applauded, no one even knew, but I felt different, more in control, more proud. Matthew said, every small private act is a brick. You're building a foundation no storm can shake. Then he told me about a friend in Australia, a firefighter named Mark, who once weighed 280 pounds. Mark didn't join flashy gyms or post about his progress. He simply started walking after every shift. He meal prepped every Sunday. He read books on nutrition instead of scrolling through social media. Over a year, he lost 90 pounds, but more than that, he said, I gained a sense of quiet power. That phrase stuck with me. I started repeating small rituals, making my bed, prepping meals, going to bed on time even on weekends. It didn't always feel exciting, but it felt right. Consistency in private builds character, and over time, it spills into every corner of life: your energy, your choices, your confidence. Now, when I look in the mirror, I don't just see physical changes. I see a man shaped by quiet, invisible victories. And that's the kind of strength no applause can ever give you. Step 7. Build a health-first environment. One evening, as Matthew and I sat watching the sun dip behind the rooftops, he asked me, have you ever considered how your environment affects your health more than your willpower ever could? I thought about it for a second. You mean like my fridge or my social circle? Exactly, he said. Your environment is the silent architect of your behavior. He wasn't just being poetic. He backed it with a study from the University of Cambridge that examined how health outcomes were significantly influenced by the design of someone's surroundings. The researchers found that people living in walkable neighborhoods with green spaces, access to fresh food markets, and low air pollution had drastically lower risks of heart disease and obesity, regardless of income or education level. It was eye-opening. We like to believe we make all our own choices, but so many of them are pre-decided by what's around us. If the couch is more inviting than the yoga mat, guess what wins? If the pantry's filled with chips instead of nuts and fruit, your hunger won't wait for idealism. That night, I went home and took a good look around. I swapped soda in the fridge with sparkling water and lemon slices, cleared the pantry of ultra-processed snacks, and filled it with almonds, oats, and dried fruit. I even moved my workout mat and dumbbells next to my bed so I'd trip over them in the morning, literally. Matthew also shared a story from Canada, where a small community in British Columbia turned around its health crisis, not by lecturing people, but by redesigning the town. They built bike lanes, opened community kitchens, hosted walking clubs. Within 2 years, diabetes rates dropped by 14%, and hospital visits decreased. But environment isn't just physically, it's also social. Matthew said, if everyone around you treats junk food and late nights like a badge of honor, your growth will feel like rebellion. I knew that feeling too well, so I started surrounding myself with people who valued wellness. I joined a local fitness group. I started having dinner with friends who appreciated healthy food and deep conversations. The more I immersed myself in that energy, the more natural those choices felt. Matthew even told me about a small coastal village in New Zealand, where local schools serve plant-based lunches. Kids grow vegetables in their classrooms, and screen time is replaced with nature walks. The result, their kids scored among the highest in emotional and physical well-being. That's when it hit me. You can't out-discipline a toxic environment. So I stopped relying only on my willpower and began building a world that supported my wellness. I placed reminders on my mirror, kept books on the nightstand instead of screens, even changed my phone wallpaper to say, "Does this fuel you or drain you?" Every change, small as it seemed, gave me a little more momentum. And now, my home, my friendships, my daily surroundings, they aren't obstacles to overcome. They're allies in my journey. Health doesn't just come from within. It comes from everything you surround yourself with. And that realization was a turning point. Step 8. Prioritize mental health as much as physical health. For the longest time, I neglected one crucial truth. The mind and body are one. You can't achieve true wellness by focusing only on your physical health. As Matthew would often say, true health is a balance, not just a checklist. It wasn't until I was struck by anxiety during a particularly stressful period in my life that I realized how tightly mental health and physical health are intertwined. I had been exercising, eating right, and sleeping well, but my mind was a battlefield. The constant pressure, doubt, and fear began to take a toll on my body. I remembered something Matthew had shared with me. Your mind is the most powerful muscle. It needs to be trained, too. In the UK, there's a growing focus on mental health, particularly in the workplace. The government has introduced initiatives to tackle mental illness, acknowledging its impact on physical well-being. Studies show that workers who engage in mental health programs report fewer sick days, improved productivity, and better physical health outcomes. I was inspired. I decided to take my mental health as seriously as my physical health. It didn't happen overnight, but I started small. I incorporated mindfulness and meditation into my daily routine. At first, I struggled to sit still. My thoughts raced, but then something shifted. I started with 5 minutes a day, then 10. I even began journaling. It felt like a release, like opening a door to a quieter, more focused version of myself. I also noticed something remarkable. My physical workouts started to feel easier. I had more energy. My endurance improved. My muscles were recovering faster. I was sleeping better. It turns out, mental health is not just something nice to have. It's something essential for true physical health. Studies from Canada and New Zealand show that when people focus on mental well-being, their bodies thrive. Mental health techniques like meditation, yoga, and therapy improve cardiovascular health, reduce chronic pain, and boost immune function. But it wasn't just about the techniques. It was about changing how I viewed mental health. No longer was it something I could ignore or brush aside. It was as critical as the food I ate or the exercise I did. Mental health required time, attention, and care. And then I met Sarah, a business owner from Australia, who is an advocate for mental health awareness in the workplace. She shared her own story of burnout and recovery. Through consistent therapy, meditation, and asking for help when needed, she turned her mental health around. Her story reinforced that mental health is a journey, not a destination. As I took my mental health seriously, I started to experience what true health felt like: balanced, whole, and sustainable. I didn't feel fragmented anymore. The anxiety that had once controlled me became more manageable. I realized that a strong mind fuels a strong body and vice versa. Matthew was right. Without mental peace, your body is just a machine. But with mental peace, your body becomes a temple. Step 9. Seeking knowledge to grow. For years, I lived with the notion that health was just about eating the right foods and exercising. It was a simple formula, or so I thought. But as I delved deeper into this journey, I realized that health isn't just physical. It's a constant learning process, an evolving understanding of how to nourish both body and mind. Matthew once told me, the best investment you can make is in your own education. Knowledge doesn't just broaden your mind, it transforms your life. In the United States, this idea of constant growth through education is ingrained in many communities. People are increasingly turning to nutritionists, life coaches, and experts to educate themselves on the deeper aspects of health. But it's not just about individual growth, it's about transforming societal views. More and more people are learning that health isn't just the absence of illness. It's a state of balance and flourishing, and it can only be achieved through continued learning. This insight sparked a new phase of my journey. Instead of sticking to the basics, I sought knowledge from experts. I listened to podcasts on mental health, read books on nutrition, and attended seminars on mindfulness. I even took courses on how the mind and body are connected, and I began understanding the intricate science behind everything from gut health to the role of stress in the body. In Canada, the healthcare system emphasizes preventive care. Many Canadians now focus on education and self-care as a means of preventing chronic diseases rather than just treating them once they arise. In fact, public health campaigns encourage individuals to engage in wellness programs and health literacy initiatives to foster a culture of proactive health management. I adopted this mindset, knowing that a proactive approach was not only smarter, but more sustainable. One of the most eye-opening experiences was when I discovered how interconnected our health systems are across the globe. In the UK, health experts often collaborate with researchers and public health organizations to create awareness campaigns about mental well-being, nutrition, and exercise. These efforts are slowly changing how people think about their overall well-being, moving away from the idea of fixing health problems to the concept of preventing them through informed choices. Armed with this knowledge, I began making better decisions about my diet, exercise, and emotional well-being. But it wasn't just about consuming knowledge, it was about applying it. I began tracking my food intake more consciously. I found that eating nutrient-dense foods not only boosted my energy, but also made me feel emotionally stable. I also started setting clearer goals for my mental health. One researched various stress reduction techniques and tried everything from deep breathing exercises to progressive muscle relaxation. It wasn't always easy, but as I committed to learning and growing, I began noticing a profound shift in my overall health. Australia has long been a pioneer in promoting mental well-being. The country's public health campaigns emphasize the importance of knowledge in improving one's health and mental resilience. I applied this same mindset to my life, realizing that seeking knowledge was the key to unlocking new layers of potential. Every new piece of information, every book I read, every expert I listened to helped me improve and evolve in ways I never expected. Matthew's advice stayed with me. Knowledge is the fuel that powers progress. Don't just be a passenger in your health journey, be the driver. As I began integrating the knowledge I gained into my daily routine, I became more aware of how my health was thriving, not just physically, but emotionally and mentally. I understood now that health wasn't just a destination. It was a continuous journey of learning, adapting, and growing. I learned that growth in health isn't linear. It's full of ups and downs, but with each setback, there's an opportunity to learn and improve. And with every lesson, my body and mind became stronger. Step 10. Inspiring others through example. As I continued down this path of health transformation, I realized something profound. The most powerful way to inspire change was not through my words, but through my actions. I had spent so much time talking about health, about wellness, and about the importance of self-care. But it wasn't until I began living those principles every day that I saw the ripple effect of my journey. Matthew had always told me, people don't listen to what you say as much as they watch what you do. Your actions will speak louder than any words you speak. And he was right. It started slowly. A few friends noticed my changes and asked how I was feeling, what I was doing differently. In the beginning, I was hesitant to share, unsure if they would see the changes as meaningful, but I decided to open up. I started by simply sharing my story about how my journey to better health wasn't about perfection, but about progress. I shared how health, for me, wasn't just about lifting weights or running miles. It was about how I felt emotionally, mentally, and physically. In the United States, there is an increasing trend of people becoming health advocates simply by living healthier lives. We see individuals sharing their fitness journeys on social media, posting about the meals they cook, the workouts they do, and the mental health practices they follow. It's not just about showing the perfect side of health, but rather the honest, real journey that others can relate to. That's exactly what I began to do. One of my close friends, Sarah, saw my transformation and decided to start her own health journey. She came to me and said, "I don't know where to start, but I see the changes in you, and I want that for myself." This was one of the most humbling moments of my life. I hadn't realized that my own journey had quietly inspired her. It wasn't just Sarah. Over time, more people began noticing the shift in me. I didn't have to preach about the importance of health. I simply lived it. I showed up for myself, day after day, and that alone was a beacon of possibility for others. In Canada, we see similar examples of how communities are coming together to support one another in health. Health advocacy isn't just about individuals. It's about creating a culture of well-being in which everyone feels empowered to take charge of their health journey. This ripple effect continued as I became more involved in my community. I began volunteering at local health workshops, sharing what I had learned about mental health, stress management, and nutrition. I didn't have all the answers, but I knew enough to make a difference. People started reaching out to me for advice, and I realized that by leading by example, I was helping others take that first step toward better health. In the UK, there is a growing emphasis on community wellness programs, which encourage individuals to work together to improve their health. I realized that my own personal journey could contribute to this broader movement. If I inspired even one person to make a change, it would ripple out to others. It wasn't about being perfect. It was about showing up, day in and day out, and making the conscious decision to live a life that prioritized health physically, mentally, and emotionally. As I continued on this path, I found that not only was I transforming my own health, but I was also helping to create a shift in the lives of those around me. One of the most significant moments was when I was asked to speak at a local event on the importance of health education. I had no idea that my journey could inspire an audience. But when I stood in front of a room full of people, all eager to learn and grow, I felt a deep sense of fulfillment. I shared the steps I had taken, how I had gone from struggling with my health to actively choosing a path of wellness. I talked about how health wasn't just about physical appearance, but about cultivating a life of balance, resilience, and continuous growth. By the end of the event, several attendees approached me, expressing how my story had motivated them to rethink their own health journey. They weren't just inspired by my words, they were inspired by my actions, by my willingness to make health a priority and share my vulnerability in the process. This was a turning point for me. It wasn't about how many people I could reach with my story. It was about how I could help others discover the power of health as their true wealth, just as I had. In Australia, many individuals and organizations are now using their platforms to educate others about the importance of taking care of not just the body, but also the mind and soul. It's a global movement, one that is steadily gaining momentum. And I realized that by simply embodying this belief in my own life, I was contributing to that movement. The true wealth of health isn't just about feeling good. It's about inspiring others to feel good too. It's about creating a ripple effect that extends beyond ourselves. Spreading the message that health is not a luxury, it's a fundamental right and an asset that belongs to us all. As I stand today, looking back on the journey I've traveled, I can see that health truly is the greatest wealth we can possess. Not just physical health, but emotional, mental, and spiritual health. These interconnected facets of well-being are the true measure of wealth. And it was through my personal journey and the lessons I learned along the way that I came to this realization. When I first began this transformation, I thought of health simply as the absence of illness, a number on a scale, or an ability to lift a certain amount of weight. But it became so much more than that. Health is not a destination. It's a continuous journey, a lifelong commitment to improving oneself, cultivating resilience, and prioritizing well-being in every aspect of life. Through every setback, I learned to persist. Through every failure, I learned to grow. And through every moment of self-doubt, I learned to trust in the process. The journey was not about perfection, it was about progress. I have witnessed the power of health in shaping not just individual lives, but entire communities, whether it's in the United States, where health initiatives and fitness movements are empowering people to take charge of their well-being, or in the UK, where mental health awareness is becoming more prevalent. The world is waking up to the importance of health. Health is not just a personal choice. It's a societal responsibility. The more we invest in our health, the more we contribute to the health of those around us. One of the most rewarding parts of this journey has been seeing the ripple effects of my actions. I've seen friends, family, and even strangers take control of their health after being inspired by my own transformation. I've seen people prioritize their mental health, join fitness communities, and embrace better eating habits. And through all of this, I've realized something crucial. This is how change happens. This is how we change the world. By showing up for ourselves, by living our truth, and by inspiring others to do the same. And it's not just about personal transformations. It's about creating a culture, a society where health is valued, where well-being is prioritized, and where people understand that the greatest wealth they have is not in their bank accounts, but in the choices they make every day to live healthier, happier lives. If we want to see a change in the world, we must first change ourselves. If we want to make a difference in society, we must begin by making a difference in our own lives. It's a snowball effect. By improving our health, we not only enrich our own lives, but we also enrich the lives of those around us. This journey, the journey to true health, is not always easy. It requires dedication, resilience, and patience. But the rewards are immeasurable, not just in how we feel physically, but in the impact we have on the world. Health is the foundation of everything. It allows us to pursue our dreams, to care for those we love, and to live a life of purpose. So, take care of your health. Cherish it, protect it, and invest in it, because it is the greatest wealth you can ever have. And when you make health your priority, you'll discover that it leads to success, fulfillment, and an abundance of blessings, not just for you, but for everyone around you. Final thoughts. In the end, the greatest wealth is not found in the money we earn, the possessions we accumulate, or the titles we hold. True wealth is found in our health, our physical, mental, and emotional well-being. And it is through this wealth that we have the power to live fully, to impact others, and to create a legacy of well-being and positivity in the world. Remember, it's not about having it all figured out. It's about showing up every day with the intention to do better, to take one small step toward health, and to keep moving forward no matter how many setbacks you face. Because with each step, you are growing, and with each step, you are building a life of true wealth. So, the next time you find yourself struggling or questioning your health journey, remember this: your health is your greatest asset. Protect it, nurture it, and let it guide you to the life you've always dreamed of.